All right, well, let's do it. Okay.
I'm just standing here because I'm tired of talking on the computer.
Let's, okay, we're gonna start. Lou, we'll start with you.
The CCOS staff and clerk's office review, actually that review, the analysis was done by interim deputy council chief of staff, Stephen Taylor, and deputy city clerk Jean Capel, and analyst Rita Jones. So Steve and Gina will address that.
That's Steve, you're on. Gina?
Just let you know, Rita's feeling a little under the weather, so she take off. I think the weather through.
Okay. At the last Organizational Development Committee meeting in February, committee members discussed the possibility of combining the office of the city clerk along with the council chief of staff office. And the staff from both offices were asked to consider the feasibility of combining the offices and determine the potential benefits of this arrangement. So that's pretty much what the study information representative was concerned. To give you some background information concerning the city clerk's office, the General Assembly through the city charter establishes the position of the city clerk and the deputy city clerk. The charter provides that in the absence or the disability of the city clerk, the deputy city clerk is authorized to act as a city clerk. The city clerk's office is comprised of the city clerk, deputy city clerk, and 5 assistant city clerks. The charter imposes that the following duties be under the city clerk's position. That entails keeping the journal of the council's proceedings, filing the original draft of all ordinances, maintaining an index of all ordinances, keeping the city's corporate seal, ensuring that the city records of the city clerk's office are open to public inspection, issuing public notices, and meetings and authenticating records. Also, the city clerk's office supports the council's meetings and some of the board, commissions, and task force record keeping. The council may also impose other duties upon the city clerk by ordinance. Also, the city clerk's office performs several functions for the administration. The clerk's office receives ordinances, introduced by the mayor and the mayor's vetoes, swears in mayoral and council appointees to various boards and commissions, and police and fire officers. They also notarize city bonds. So that's some of the background concerning the city clerk's office. Steve's going to get into the council chief of staff office. Do you have any questions concerning your information this morning?
Yeah, I guess I do have one question. And that is that has the role of the city clerk changed since we went to this form of government? Steve, you?
I would just add slightly that now that the mayor has his veto authority, he's transmitting the vetoes through the clerk to the county. And when they're making board appointments, sometimes people establishing task forces and things like this, those folks are being sworn in, the mayoral appointees and so forth are being sworn in and handled by the clerk's office too. So it's kind of serving both the whole city, I should say. And that's the difference that's involved now, that even though the governments are, even though these roles have changed under the new form of government.
The reason that I asked the question is because I know that under the old form of government, before city council had staff, that a lot of the, or some of the work that our staff does now was done by the clerk's office. So in that way, it seems to me that role has changed some in terms of the clerk.
Yes, it has changed some, and we outlined a little bit later in the memo some distinctions.
Okay,
but
good.
That has changed. That part has changed.
Okay.
The liaison used to administrative things for the positions, job handling the clerk's office also.
Rita?
This new form of government, or since I
guess since we've hired a chief of staff on the third floor, is it less work for city clerk on the second floor, or is it more?
We wouldn't have gone back and looked at like workload, but I think the thing that's changed is when you, I would say that it's not less, just by observation, because when you've added the administration and the go-between between administration, work between the two, the CAO's office, I would dare say that it's probably not less, but Lou and I know different. I think it's different. I wouldn't say that it's less.
Can I ask Lou?
I think Steve was right, that the duties have just changed with the addition of the council chief of staff officer, chief of staff office relative to the clerk's office. So, what I would suggest, if you have questions about that, is that we hear the rest of the report and then maybe talk about where you want to go from there.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, just a little background on the council's office. You all established a chief of staff separate from the various other positions, all by ordinance. They weren't all established at the same time. Mostly the liaisons were established first. Then it looks like the various analysts, the chief of staff of those analysts. You also established the Department of Legislative Services, been sort of vacant. I think that the only two people that I can recall were in the legislative services were myself and Helen Boyd. And that's when we were drafting ordinances in addition to research. But again, all of those offices are folks in the office of the chief of staff, council policy analyst, liaison, budget analyst, public relations specialist, and then the establishment, as I mentioned earlier, of the Department of Legislative Services and a director of that department. We have in the department some things that we call fiscal analysts, but they're not established by ordinance, so we have some executive assistants. And of course, the liaisons are in there, and it's also established by ordinance. In general, we provide a broad support to council on researching, drafting reports, requests for ordinances and resolutions, some other special duties of supporting the committees, facilitating media, community, and intergovernmental relations, and budget analysis. The key distinctions that I should point out between these two functions, clerk and council staff, is that the charter requires the appointment of a city clerk to serve the city and the citizens. It does not require the appointment of the council staff. Council has broad discretion in establishing a staff and how that's created and how that's run. Council staff is designed to serve the council and its needs, whereas a clerk, although appointed by council, serves key interests and needs of the entire city in similar fashion that you would have with the other charter officials, like the city attorney, the city auditor, and the assessor. So those are the big differences. The big difference is the staff serves the council and its members and its committees, and the clerk has these broader duties, now including the administration. We looked at some pros and cons of possibly doing this. The only pro we could think of is there might be some nominal savings in having only one head of the two offices. But we weren't sure what that would mean because there had been some expression of the idea of a deputy of some sort to be the direct supervisor of that staff person, so that would change the amounts of that savings. However, we did, looking at the cons, think of several things that might be problematic in doing so. One, that the clerk's office is now serving not only the council but the administration. And if the offices were combined and the clerk's office was treated like staff in some ways, it might compromise this view that the administration might have of whether or not this is neutral territory, as I like to call it, Switzerland. The clerk's office is not aligned, that's sort of appointed by council. The other distinction is, in a way, since the charter establishes the clerk's office, it's sort of senior in law its creation to the council staff. They're not exact equals. The deputy positions in both offices are not equivalents. There's no deputy established in ordinance for council staff. For most of the time, council has had a staff. They haven't had a deputy for the overwhelming majority of the time. Whereas there's some recognition of the deputy in the charter for the clerk's office. So those two positions aren't equivalent. The state mandates a certain amount of record keeping by the clerk and how it's supposed to be done. It will be difficult for the person to possibly manage both of these, the office, the staff, and this record keeping function in a neutral fashion. Combining the offices might hinder some opportunities because all the positions are not exactly equivalent, not the same pay range, same pay bands, and might create some tensions if you were to combine offices like that. We're not clearing this sort of thing up before doing so. So our ultimate recommendation is that you might not want to do this because most importantly is this neutrality factor that's become important for the clerk's function. And so we concluded that you probably want to keep these things separate. We did offer an alternative that if you wanted to do this thing, you might consider that the only practical way of doing it is to have the council or some council staff report to the clerk, since the clerk's office is established in state law, and you all have broad authority on how you want to arrange the staff. The only practical way of doing it is to have your staff somehow report through a director. It could be the director of legislative services, it could be a deputy, it could be even somebody called the chief of staff, it could be the executive director, whatever you want to call it. That person would have to report to the clerk rather than vice versa. But the staff person, the clerk reported to the chief of staff.
So your after this research, your recommendation would be that we have the two separate offices, the clerk and the chief of staff. Questions for Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, Marty?
It seems to me, another one of these instances where we're begging the question, what's broken, we're trying to fix it. We know that clerk's position is established by charter. We know that, well, I'm not sure whether we ever cleared up through ordinance how we even feather out our liaison with regards to them being called staff. Came into office believing that they work for us. Now, later on, that sort of morphed into work under the chief of staff, where applicable, where permissible. Now, I don't know where we are. And so, at minimum, we ought to want to at least get that cleared up. And then, I was concerned, I voiced my concern about moving the clerk, who is in a purely apolitical position, running that office that the charter calls for, and then she becomes one and the same as chief of staff in the most political environment in the city. Scares the willies out of me. And so,
Wonder where that little voice.
yeah.
That was a scary little voice.
Who did it come from? Oh, Jesus.
Didn't sound like Luda, did it?
The most political place in City Hall. How do you manage that without, at some point down the road, inadvertently going across the line? It's something that ain't broke. Why are we trying to fix it with all the stuff that needs fixing? Why don't we focus on that instead of this? I like an answer.
Lou, did you have something to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think this conversation started, when I served as interim for the council chief of staff. And it was just a time for, since the position was within, when it was empty upon my appointment, it was just a time for members to say, okay, let's look at things, how we've been doing them. Is it working? Is it time for us to take a different direction? But as the research has proven, those offices, their recommendation is, based on the research, that they stay separate. And I thought that's what you wanted, was just to look at it, hear what the research, how that came down, and then you decide how you want to move forward.
Right, Chris, did you have something to
I
add?
did, yes, real quickly. Excuse me, well, the question that was asked about this, I believe, the problem was, just any sort of overlap and trying to create efficiencies in our city government. And I want to juxtapose that to what we encountered earlier with the school administration and the $24 million hole, 23, somewhere in that neighborhood, and not looking under every rock to find some savings. So I think that's what our original intent was. I think we've gotten the answer back. It's pretty clear, and I want to finally add that I'm shocked and appalled that politics is getting such a bad name. Thank you.
Scaring people.
Right. Well, I think, I'm not hearing any disagreement on that. I think that everybody's sort of satisfied that we should go ahead with looking for a clerk. But something that I would like to suggest before we go out looking for a clerk is that Joya review what our clerk does now and see if that position has changed any since we have gone to this new form of government. And then we can better advertise for what it is we need for that position. Is that?
This analysis is not enough?
This analysis, didn't look at that. You know, I just think that, I know that prior to wanting to be on council here, I guess all of us, except for Ellen and Reva, that the clerk's office, for a long time, the council people's offices were in with the clerk. There was a lot of interaction with the clerk and council because that was sort of the people that did their work for them. And so I'm just sort of suggesting that we look at this position and we keep this position, but look at it in terms of what the duties of that clerk have been and just bring them in line with what they are today. Chris?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I think one other thing I'd like to add would be, as a person that voted to change the form of government, like 80% of people did, I'm not sure it passed by that today, but nonetheless, I think we're trying to work with what we have. And so one of the things was to give the chief executive to the city that was responsible for the whole city as opposed to each council district and the council members choosing the mayor. But the other thing that I believe that we were looking for was some oversight and some analysis, some separate analysis, so that in the marketplace of ideas, council ideas and administration ideas would come together and let the best one win or morph them into yet a third plan. And so I'd like to see us have as many analysts as we can. I know we kind of get backed up with that. And so I want to make sure that we're as strong as we can be with those positions, because it is vitally important when you get an idea that you can send it to someone and they can massage it a little bit. And we just don't have the resources that the administration has to do that. So I really want to see if we, and I think Ms. Ali would be in a great position being with the clerk, being the clerk before and now being chief of staff, as to the needs from an analyst position. So would welcome your feedback on that with this new thing that the president's requesting.
Okay. Thank you. Good, we good on that?
Not quite.
Okay.
Well, maybe so, because it looks like we're going to talk about my issue.
You've won.
Huh?
You've won.
I won.
Yeah.
The point is, I mean, you raised an interesting point that
Okay.
I work to change the structure of government, that voters, that citizens can have one central person to hold accountable to the direction and growth and development of the city. When that does not occur, we definitely need those analysts to assist us in the kind of scrutiny necessary to peer into this administrative work to determine whether we're on the right course or not, strongly as need be or not, and what kind of outcomes can we expect, and how do we talk to our voters who put us here to do just that. When that doesn't seem to be materializing or when it gets muddled, then it's incumbent upon us to step in with goals, objectives, and timetables. And I'm looking at the strategic goals, these are from 2010. These aren't goals. These
But we're gonna get to that, Mark.
These are vision items.
We're gonna get to
We can
that.
have all the vision in the world, but we got a school system that we got something to say about, although we're not on the school board. There are all sorts of things that we need to be addressing that we just sort of
Well, we're
out
gonna
of
get,
picture.
we're gonna get to
All
that.
right.
Okay.
But
And I know that everybody, this is not to rush this, we have some very important things to talk about. But VCU tip-off is at 7.
I just came back from the CIAA.
I just want
I
to,
can't get that exercise, but
I just want to follow up with one thing on Councilor Hilbert's point. So Councilor, was that to ensure that, your charge is to ensure that we have the number of analysts on staff per HR policy, or is that
Well,
what you were saying?
but-
Or make sure we have those positions filled?
No, I would ask that you give us your honest assessment of if we need more
Oh, I see what
staff
you're
in that
saying.
area.
It's kind of funny, in looking around on this, you did find that it's sort of like what Dave used to say, it took 50 years to get to one form of government, it'll take time to evolve. And, you can almost envision when you're looking at some other cities, what council members have as staff, it's kind of the direction that you might see, 5 or 10 years from now, where you and your successors will be. And, a lot of governments, as they divide, what you end up having is the council will take on more staff, and some even what they do is, the members will start wanting or end up having their own policy person, their own budget person, their own community relations / liaison type person. So I don't know if, I would doubt if that's where you're at right now, but you can see that some cities, as they divide the governments, the councils find a greater and greater need for staff to keep up with the other side of the government.
Right, and that's what I'm looking for. As I said, I think that what people wanted was also a new set of eyes with new ideas. Not every new idea emanates from the mayor's office and shouldn't.
Right.
We can do those things ourselves, but in theory, at least, this is a part-time job. We all know different than that, but nonetheless, we do need that help to do that. So, and let me finally say that we're not adding to the bureaucracy here. I hope that people don't hear that. But I'm looking for better outcomes and a objective look at administration proposals as well as our own proposals that we come up with. So that's what I'm seeking, and I think that will be a good return on the taxpayers' investment.
Lou?
And Madam Chair, just, I know you said to consult with HR to look at the duties, but do you need to maybe come back next month? Can we move forward with advertising for the clerk?
Well, I would think that before, we've been stumbling along, by the time with, and this is my opinion, you serving as interim. I think it would be helpful in our advertising to know exactly what the position entails and what kind of talents we need in that position. And if it has changed, maybe we need different different calendar.
But I'm saying, if I get that before next month, you want me to bring that information back?
I'd like you to get that, I mean, I would like, as soon as we get that information, I'd like us to get it and then move forward with
Okay.
advertising the position. Ellen?
I guess the question that I would ask, and it's just something that hasn't been addressed, and we should have. But, you know, we have the benefit of the fact that the clerk, who has been serving as clerk the entire time of this process, with maybe an exception of maybe a year, has probably gone through some of the, you know, real beginning years of this whole process of formulating this. And, I mean, we have the expertise of Lou that has served in now both positions and is currently serving in both positions. And so I think we couldn't have a better sense of not only what we may perceive to think is needed, but on the ground experience of working with both. I can't imagine that, that if there's some significant deficiency that is necessary, that she would probably be the best person that could probably tell us what it is than anyone else, having been on the ground doing both jobs for this job at least 6 months now, I would think, or longer, and for the 6 years or more of experience as a clerk. One of the things that I do think that is challenging is that, you know, if we make the decision to keep the two departments, the clerk and this office, and I combine them, that we provide the necessary relief as quickly as we can in the process so that we can go on and fill the clerk position and get things rolling, because at any rate, Lou is still going to be there to some degree to have to do cross-training and some of those kinds of things to make it work. So unless we have some reason to think that there's a huge HR requirement, I would like us to maybe proceed with the advertisement and getting that process moving forward for the clerk.
Charlie?
I agree, and I'll tell you why. I think because the duties of the clerk are, I understood it, primarily set out by charter, we know what the clerk has to do. And like Ellen said, we have the current clerk that's not leaving city employment, it's shifting to a new role, where there will be some overlap where advice can be given and determinations can be made about how things are done. But I don't see where the core responsibilities of the clerk are going to substantially change. And by charter, we got to keep it that way. So I agree with Ellen. I think if we should move forward with the advertisement, we can still hear back about what things may have to change, but the skill set that we need, that the charter demands in our clerk, isn't going to change.
I don't think there's a middle ground for me. I think we should proceed with all due haste, but I think we can accomplish the same in terms of having benefit of Lou's. I mean, we could at a formal session next week, I mean, this isn't a study of nauseam, I mean, she would have an opportunity to take a look to see, based on exactly what you said, her experience in that seat, anything she would suggest needs to be added or that nothing. But that we swiftly deal with that, I mean, we could do Monday at informal and still have both the opportunity for her to take a look, someone who's sat and see, as well as, you know, to make any update to the advertisement.
Marty? Then Ellen, then Doug.
And then,
I need y'all to help me out here. The duties of the clerk are prescriptive. It's all laid out in the charter. Any changes, look, in all likelihood, yeah, in all likelihood, no likelihood, somebody in this room has got to send in a request to activate HR on the open position to be advertised. Any changes that can be viewed more than likely are going to be minuscule. It can be right up,
Minuscule or minuscule, either way.
I said minuscule.
Yes.
But yes, I got you.
You carry me to
I got you.
school when we
I
finish
got
this
you.
meeting.
I got you.
The point is that it's not gonna make a hell of beans, except that it can be written into the request for filling the position. There's nothing complicated. Where the notion comes from that the duties of the clerk or anything about the clerk's office has changed. If anything, we ought to be using our energy changing the makeup of RMA. Why are we fooling with the
Amen.
clerk's office and there ain't nothing wrong with it? So, I don't know what this is all about. I start getting suspicious and red flags start popping all up when we're trying to fix something that ain't broke.
Well, I think we've already determined that we are going to have two positions, the clerk and the chief of staff. And Lou, you wanted to say something?
I was just gonna say that if it's your desire, I can look at this and provide you some information by Monday, according to
Okay.
council duties.
Does that work?
Just as long as we need to do it
Right.
with all
That's-
the speed, not wait for
I think
another
everybody
month.
agrees
I
with that.
agree.
For Monday.
I agree.
Okay, so
Monday is what I was
Monday,
talking
she's gonna
about.
come back to us. Reva?
That is formal.
And what would be the range of the salary of that person?
Not information.
It's in the,
Is all it?
There's a portion attached showing the salary ranges of both offices in a position.
Okay, but that's including the new duties or the old, or,
People got those.
I know I said earlier that,
The salary range for the clerk. Okay. But it's right before you, all of the positions.
okay? Reva, did you get your question answered, Reva? Yes? Okay, good. All right, done with that. Okay, Alan, looks like you're up next.
I've been able to talk with a few of you about this, but I'll go ahead and go through the whole thing, start and make sure everybody's on the same page. Haskell, who deserves all the credit for putting pen to paper on this and another wad about that thick. What we're talking about is something we've been talking about with the administration for several months now. The O&R process is one that for the administration has been around since 2006. They do things a little differently now. There have been some problems that have cropped up. And in connection with dealing with those problems, one of the things that we realized in my office is that we needed to put in place a policy that had some deadlines and some timelines. And in doing that, we realized in order to do it, we also needed to ask you to adjust your rules of procedure to change the deadline for council members to introduce or to send papers to my office. And that's what the paper that, or the proposed draft paper that's been put in front of you would do. To follow on Mr. Jewell's comment, here's what's broke. What's broke is that right now, your deadline to get papers to us is Wednesday before the council meeting at noon. Depending on what we get, depending on what kind of papers might be already in our office from the administration, what can happen and what often does happen is that we're not able to get material, a draft, back to you until sometimes Friday, sometimes the weekend, and let's face it, there have been times that we've been working on stuff Monday at 6:30, and that's just not a good way to do business. So one of the problems that we want to fix is getting you guys an opportunity to review papers. What we would propose to do is to move the deadline from Wednesday at noon back to Friday, close of business. What that would do is give us an extra half a day, but internally, our policy would be that all papers would be returned to the patrons by close of business Wednesday. That would give you Thursday, Friday, the weekend, Monday, whatever you need, to review the papers, and most importantly, make sure that what we have written down is what you really want. Give you an opportunity to give us feedback so that we can fix what we didn't get quite right the first time. And if things go well, it will give us, in my office, a better opportunity to deal with true emergencies. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that we have always tried to get papers introduced without real regard for deadlines, the Wednesday at noon deadline. We'll still do that. We recognize that there are situations where things are an emergency. We're going to do our best to deal with those too. But by having a little bit more time built into the schedule, I think we'll be in better position to deal with those emergencies and give you a better product overall. So if y'all are agreeable, what we would like to do is to take this draft and put all members of council as patrons on it and introduce it next Monday. We have talked with the administration. They also will make some modifications to their procedure, in their case primarily dealing with emergencies. They are ready to go. The effective date on all this would be the meeting of May 14th. We're going to do some training sessions for department heads with the administration toward the end of this month to familiarize them with the revisions that we made to the administration's guidelines, working with Mr. Marshall. And that's what I want to talk to you about, and hopefully get you all out of your heads.
Are there any questions?
Yes, I'm not sure I know what you're asking. Currently, deadline is the Wednesday preceding the Monday meeting.
Correct.
I heard Friday.
Friday
You're talking
before
about
that
Friday
Wednesday.
before, so
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking 2 Fridays out from the Monday
Yes.
meeting. And that gives us time to adjust. Deadline is a deadline, but rather than drop stuff on you on the Friday before the Monday, or the Monday itself, it adds a little more wiggle room.
And what I really want is for us to have that time to get the papers ready and back to you so that you have time to review them, so that you can look at them and say to us, "No, this is not exactly what I want." That's the main goal, is to make what gets introduced more likely what you really want.
So, if I may, Madam President,
Sure.
country boy that I am, you say deadline is deadline. To give one more wiggle room on both sides of this equation, suggest that we're talking about 2 Fridays out, is the target date. If there's flexibility there, then it ain't quite a deadline. I just want to know how much flexibility can we count on. I mean, we go to meetings all day, every day. Ideas, information, constituents, they input into us, and we're saying, whoa, how did we miss that? We need to get that on right now. And to foreclose the opportunity to do it 2 Fridays out is scary, unless there's some allowance that we've got enough wiggle room that we can get it in, provided that it's not too complex. If not, if it's too complex, under any circumstances, you just have to do what you can do. or put it off.
And that's essentially the type of attitude, if you will, that we take now. We not uncommonly get papers 12 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. We never turn those away. It just doesn't make sense. What we typically do, whether it's a paper or an O&R request from one of you, or whether we get it from the administration, is we take a look at it, even if it's after the deadline. And if it is something that is simple and that can be done without, without taking big risks that it's not going to be right, we go ahead and do it. And that's not going to change. What this does, though, is it allows us to build in our timeline internally so that for the bulk of the stuff that we do, for all of the routine stuff that we do, you'll have time to take a look at it and review it.
There are other questions, comments? Cynthia?
Yeah, I just, I thought I had it, but I want to make sure. We're simply backing the due date up from Wednesday to the prior Friday.
2.5 days.
Okay, I just want to be clear. Okay. And I just want to say I really appreciate that and would support that in as much as the last paper that came forward for me, which pertained to the Slave Trail Commission, had an item in there that was not, and I certainly didn't have an opportunity to quite vet, but that I think really came from a very earlier paper that where there was indeed a point, the very first commission had 13 members. There was no intent to change the current number, but somewhere in there and so I'm appreciative of having just a little more time to be able to review and to get back and make sure that we got it so that when it does go forth, at least when citizenry are commenting, they're commenting on what was well intended from all of us. So.
I want to say that I think my staff does an outstanding job getting stuff to you. The number of errors that are in our papers are very small. They do happen. We're human. It's going to happen. Hopefully, we can make the number even smaller than it is now.
But what I want to be clear in saying is that what you said is absolutely correct. It is not my experience that there are, voluminous errors, and I suspect, I don't know where that fell, actually, so I'm not suggesting that I'm just suggesting that it occurred and that more time would allow us all to get our arms around it. So, yeah, so I don't want you to hear something that I'm not saying. Okay.
Well, I was going to say here, and maybe we don't need to muddy this up, but if we had any other changes to our rules and procedures, would it be a good time to throw those out?
One thing at a time.
So, I'm vetting that. I appreciate my quick response to my colleague for a second.
I like the way you think, Charles.
So,
Having carefully considered the suggestion.
Thank you.
Considered.
We'll move on.
anticipated.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
Doug, you had something?
I think it's a good idea to do this. I think still if you have papers that you want to expedite more, you still can do that. So I would support it as well.
And I would just suggest, Alan, you said you were going to have some, and I concur with this also, you said you were going to work with administration staff on it. I think it probably would be a good idea for our staff on the third floor plus our liaisons to get a good handle on it so that we know where we are.
We're going to hold, I think it's 2 sessions now. Toward the end of March, we'll make sure that invites go to the chief of staff.
Okay, thanks. All right, everybody's patroning this. This is by all members of council?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, personal property tax. Every year. Tony, are you here to talk to that?
Yeah, that's why they sent me.
Ha! And can you speak to it?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
Tony Leon, Department of Finance. Each year,
Have a seat, Tony.
yeah, this resolution just sets the 2012 TPTRA rate at 60%. Each year the state gives The city of Richmond, $16.7 million, and we have to set the rate as close as we can to fully exhaust that amount over the qualifying bills, the 2012 tax bills, qualifying bills.
And the rate's the same this year as it was last year?
Same as last year's rate, based on.
I have no idea where we're going.
Is there a reduction?
Personal property.
All right, we're going to have questions, so let's put our hand on personal property. All right, Chris, you had a question?
I do. On the be it resolved here, the last sentence under item number 1, it's the language here. Vehicles with assessed value greater than $20,000 shall not be eligible for tax relief. Isn't that the value of the car over 20?
Yes.
Well, to me, this says every car over 20,
Yeah, it's.
you get no relief.
This is, apparently, this is the form that this has been in for years and years. And we are actually talking about it today. If you want to amend it, it's an easy fix. If you want to leave it, it is also not a problem because this is a resolution. It is, the actual rule about 20,000 is set out in the ordinance. These folks have administered it, notwithstanding what the resolution says about that one sentence for years. So it's, up to you folks.
I'd like to correct it here myself here, just so we're crystal clear that it is the value of automobiles in excess 20 that is not eligible for relief, that cars, that the first 20,000 is eligible for that 60% relief.
We'll have an amendment ready Monday, and because it's a resolution, you can act on it after you amend it.
All right, great. And if we can, let's see, Mr. Bourne was here earlier. Mr. Denslow, if you'll just let the mayor know on this, just let the tweet, that'd be great.
And Alan?
Thank you.
Question, as it relates to personal property and the decrease in the projected revenue that is coming in, how much impact cars have played into the change, and whether or not this consistency of the 60% still achieve the objective that we want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, the model we use, we assumed a slight growth over last year, and so it doesn't swing the rate at all. Is that, as far as I know, that's a budget question. In terms of setting it from a collections process, that's two separate issues. I'm not.
I asked the question because your comment was that the 60% gives us the greatest flexibility of using the appropriation, the full appropriation from the city. And so I guess my question is whether or not changes in the actual values that we're using for personal property and the changes that we've seen, whether or not this 60% still works. And you're saying
Yeah, this
it does.
reflects a slight growth in assessed values from last year to this year.
All right. Do we want council to patron that with the mayor? Is there anybody that does not want to patron this? Okay. Maybe
As
it's not like
amended.
we have a choice. As amended. Okay, Lou, board vacancies?
Actually, Deputy Capel's gonna handle that.
Say what?
Jean's gonna handle that.
Okay, Jean?
Yes, this month's vacancies consist of the audit committee. Currently, there is one vacancy on that committee, that is for a lawyer or experienced individual in financial services, in the financial services industry. There are no applicants for that one. I wanted to bring that to your attention. For the Richmond Regional Planning District Commission, we have one reappointment application for consideration. That's Douglas C. Dunlap.
And has that gone through committee?
That comes through OD.
Okay.
Organization. Mhm.
Does anyone have any heartburn with Mr. Dunlop? Being reappointed?
Who is that? I don't know.
Planning.
Planning.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Where does she reside? Where does she reside?
see. There was a letter from him requesting, well, he resides here in the building according to this, his reappointment application.
Wrong.
Right.
He does not live in the city, he does work in the city.
Okay.
He's an employee.
Is he an employee of the city? or-
Yes, yes.
He's the director of community planning.
Oh, okay. All right, I know who he is now.
He was on the board with the Port Authority.
Yeah. Very much so. He
Yeah.
served in the interim
Right,
when Mr. Jones had headed south,
right.
or wherever,
That's
east.
All right, everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Next, for the Richmond Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, there are currently 2 alternate vacancies and 1 voting member vacancy. We have received reappointment application for Tom Flynn as a voting member and M. Kahara as an alternate.
Okay. Any, both of the employees, okay with that?
Good.
Okay.
Moving on to Health and Human Services Standing Committee.
Is there one down the bottom?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
there
okay.
is for Finance and Economic Development Standing Committee, the Minority Business Enterprise and Emerging Small Businesses Advisory Board appointment. We have an application from Charles C. James.
And that went through the committee with recommendation for approval?
Yes.
Any problems with that? Okay.
Then for Health and Human Services, the Advisory Board of Recreation and Parks, we have reappointment applications from Norman Burns and Hugh Truesdale.
Okay. Any problems with that? All right.
Next, for the Arts and Cultural Funding Conservatorium, we have an appointment application from Rashad Day.
Any problems with that? All right.
For the Carillon Advisory Council, we have received an appointment application from Stephen Hancham.
Does anybody have any problem with that? And
Yeah, I
that has
just
some,
missed one. Oh, I see it.
that has some specific qualifications. Is he, I mean, Stephen Hancham. As long as he's qualified, I'm fine with
Okay.
it. Okay.
Next, for the Social Services Advisory Board, we received an appointment application for Evan Bailey.
And that went through Health and Human Services?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right.
Next, for the State Board of Community Colleges, J. Sargent Reynolds Community College Board, we received an appointment application for Stephen E. Burrell.
And that went through Health and Human Services?
Yes.
Okay. Any problems with that? Okay.
Next, from the Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Standing Committee for the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, we've received reappointment applications from Elliot Harrigan and Orlando Artez.
And those went through land
Arts.
use?
Question,
Yes, sir.
have these folks reached the end of their second terms?
The committee terms, can they serve?
I
Two,
mean,
three,
I have,
they're both reappointments.
yeah, I have, Madonna and Posse originally appointed Elliot to this commission. I have done one reappointment. So this would be his third term.
His third term.
And we just read the other night, Grant's Nation thing, which ones have 3 years,
Right,
3
three.
terms versus 2 versus infinite.
Well, I think
Alan versus.
Alan told us about how most of the authorities, if not all of them, basically don't have state term limits. I asked a question last time, who in this room knows of anyone who served more than 2 terms on RRHA board, and no answer. And I found out from both Oliver Singleton, former board chairman, and from Kenny Johnson, former board chairman, that it is tradition that we serve no more than 2 terms. And we have not broken that tradition. And so, given the shape that RRHA is in, from what I see, clearly we need new blood on there. We don't need to put folks on that board ad infinitum. Particularly, what we tend to do, and that is to overload the number of persons on the board who have sizable real estate interests, but very little human interest with regards to the public housing population that board oversees. So, why are we breaking tradition? Now, Mr. Arts, I believe this is the end of his second term. I don't think it's quite
I don't
up
think
yet.
so. I think this,
Let me bring,
yeah,
your
bring us up to
attention
speed on that.
Two is, Mr. Harrigan, well, actually, both of these individuals initially started by filling unexpired terms.
Okay, so that would explain.
So that would explain it.
Mr. Lupassi's.
So he would fill.
So this would be
He
this-
would complete the unexpired term
Of,
of the first term when?
That actually expired on this June 11th for Artsy. And this July 2011, it expired for Harrigan.
right.
First
That
term?
was the
First
second,
term.
that was the first
The
term.
first term.
First
Yes.
The unexpired term expired
full
in
term.
07.
All right, the unexpired term expired in
Harry.
07
For her.
for Harrington.
For Harrigan.
And then he took on another, what, 3 or 4 year term? Which,
July,
which 3 or 4 year term?
4 year.
It's a 4 year term.
from 07 to, 2011.
Okay. So he's only completed one term of his own.
Full
Correct.
One full term. Right. Now, a second term is fair game. What about Mr. Archie?
Mr. Artsy's unexpired term ended on June 2011. So Artsy is still eligible to serve.
He's
his first.
replacing whom? I don't seem to remember him going on as a fill-in.
Brian Jackson resigned.
That's right.
Yeah,
He did.
that's right.
Mr. Jackson did resign, I
Resign.
remember that.
So, Orlando has served,
One,
Unexpired term only.
Only an expired
Only,
term.
only an unexpired term.
right.
but he stopped serving when?
Well, he remained, when he started serving that unexpired term, July 09, and it
It's
ended
been 2 years.
June 2011.
So that term's done, and he's been
Appointed.
Yeah,
appointed to a full term.
correct.
I'm cool with it.
Okay.
So,
Huh?
I'm
Mr. Hubbard?
asking Mr. Jewell here, are you suggesting that, that maybe we would want to institute a rule here, or you, because I don't know that people, get the handbook there that tells them that they're supposed to, only serve 2 terms, or this is tradition, and then how much of an unexpired term would someone want to serve in order to, could somebody serve as much as, in theory, 10 years? If you're less than, half the term, I don't know, I'm asking you.
I hear you, and you're right, we need to clarify it. And there's nothing that restrains us from putting term limits on. It's just that the state never did. Yeah.
And I don't think there's any HUD rules on that as well. I
Right.
think we, though, want to make sure that, the Housing Authority has been, we've been chucking rocks at it from time to time over the years. But I think that once you get inside of the place, it is more complicated than it appears from the outside. So I don't think that longevity is necessarily a negative when it comes to serving on this board, because I think 2 is probably plenty, but I think that unlike some boards, I think having longer serving members on this one is probably a good idea, because I think it takes you a couple of years possibly to get your feet under you to figure out, there's a lot of moving parts here, the public housing, the housing choice vouchers, the redevelopment, wing of this organization, so, but I understand your point. Thank you.
If I
Mr.
may,
Jewell.
you're absolutely correct, except for. And
Okay.
that is the housing authority, like the health department,
Yeah.
like social services, are highly regulated agencies. They have classes that you can go away to. They pay the city, HUD pays you to go, where you learn about these regulations. You learn about what the rest of the nation is doing. You get to know how to teach others what those regulations are in public housing. And we can measure how serious our members are as to how many trainings they've gone to. And if you've basically not done them, it means that you just jiving. So we can gather that information. It's public information as to who's gone off to these trainings, how many have participated in local trainings right here. But you can't know this stuff unless you go through these trainings, nor can you be helpful to the residents and or to the city unless you know those regs. So that's a good measure.
Be good to get that information.
Yes, I'll get it.
Okay, any other questions on that?
So I'd like to just comment on it.
Yes.
I think if what Mr. Jewell is recommending as relates to members that serve on this board needs to take so many trainings, that we need to make those things known because, people need to know what we expect of them when they volunteer to serve on these boards. And I know, we all know, but, this is one of those boards that I remember when I talked to Mr. Harrington. Oh, Harrigan.
Yes.
I mean, at some point he was saying, I'm between not being able to run my business because of the number of hours that I am spending
No question.
with this. So, it's a tremendous responsibility, and I think that if we want to measure people's sincerity based on certain things, then we need to at least let them know what that is so that at the end of the day, I can tell you this man has invested, and I know what he has invested, just from my perspective. I'm sure there's much, much more. For him to not get a most acceptable assessment of quality of services that he's rendered, because he may or may not have taken any training, I don't know. I think we just need to be a little bit clearer, and maybe as we put this position in place with the boards, we can start being more clear with what we expect, not only of people to do while they serve, but what kind of reporting and all of those kinds of things as well.
Lou?
Just an observation.
Since the Vice President brought that up, just in the interest of time, I just want to let you know, I am going to share some information about that position because I think the expectations are high. I appreciate you giving us the position, but I want to be clear about the parameters of that position.
Okay,
I
Marty?
just totally agree with all that.
Because it's becoming
It's just
a
that,
Yeah, I was gonna say, we got
I agree with all that. It's just that I guarantee you, they know from day one, they get their orientation once they get on that board. What we need to do is probably prepare them for what to expect. But they know the minute they get their orientation going on the board. So it's a tough piece, but and you're going to hear more from me about the resident commission. Hopefully, Ms. Newell and I will get a chance to sit down and talk about that. But HUD regulations said that resident commissioner shall not be treated in any way different from any other member on that board. And so, if we give three terms for those who are sitting there, then we have to do that for that resident commissioner.
Unless RTO wants one.
No,
Okay, well, why don't we
RTO
wait
can't
till we
change
get, we're gonna have a session on RRHA,
All right.
so let's wait till we get there. Okay, any more discussion on this on the citizen appointees?
No.
Okay, all right, public safety?
Yes, public safety, the Capel Area Alcohol Safety Action Program, ASAP Policy Advisory Board, received a reappointment application from William Muse.
Any questions on that? Okay,
For the Community Criminal Justice Board, we received a reappointment application from Robin William Dow.
all right, any question on that one?
Qualified?
Went through
Yeah, it's a
public
qual-
safety,
it's a
she's
qualified
qualified, yes.
qualification position, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are all of the appointments. We have
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes, sir. Mr. Hilbert.
the, excuse me, I met with a member of the Green City Commission, and they indicated to me that someone's application had been in the clerk's office for a number of months, and I'm just wondering if we had received that application of Mr. Farley. Are you familiar with that name? Green City?
Green City.
Green.
Thank you, we could not hear it.
I'm sorry, let me enunciate. Green
Green
City
as
Commission.
Green Acres.
I thought
Yeah.
you said grew.
I'll stop mumbling though. Sorry.
Counselor, we can look into that, I don't have that.
We'll have to check.
Okay, so
Also,
all right. It's there, that's the only vacancy, I believe, on the group, so,
Green City, Mr. Farmer.
yes.
We'll get back to you.
Okay, next, moving along, board vacancy discussion, Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Ms. Robertson, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Ms. Gracian and I had a brief meeting on that, and you all should have received a copy of a draft of some changes that we are proposing that would be made to the ordinance. It is a draft. It did go to the attorney's office for them to begin to assess it, to see whether or not it meets within, there are some restrictions as to what we can do or cannot do as it relates to a trust and setting up a trust in this operation. My understanding is that the attorneys are currently in the process of looking at that, but they have not finished the review of the draft. I will say that some of the changes that have all of the changes that are being made should be easy enough for you to follow what changes are being proposed. Some of the most critical things consist of the types of membership. We previously had a provision in this paper that excluded any membership of a business or organization that served on this board. They could not benefit from, they could not use any of the funds. They were excluded from use of any funds out of the trust fund. That is problematic, especially from the perspective that several of the recommendations, for the persons who would serve, it also included a large part of our nonprofit organizations that we would like to have a voice in this, but they would certainly also be the persons that would take advantage of using of the funds for the development of the affordable housing. The proposed recommendation for the changes in the membership gives a majority of the membership to low-income residents, both homeowners and renters, so that we would really have that profound people voice as a part of this operation. The administration of the fund would be put together by the staff as it relates to the recommendation of the operations of the types of programs, qualifications, and those kinds of things, which council would approve, and the board would not be a policy board as much as it is an advisory board. The other representations on the board would consist of someone from Fair Housing, someone from State HUD, someone from Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority, someone from the Association of Realtors, Association of Home Builders, possibly DHDA, because a lot of the tax credits and those kinds of funding is also a part of the funding that we would be used to support something like this. The positions that we're taking off, if you look at the second page of the handout that you have at the very bottom, where it says composition, was the licensed attorney, practicing attorney in real estate, housing financing, a real estate agent, and a small business with 100 employees or more. And like I said, the major change in the composition really gives a greater voice to residents that are families that live in the city of Richmond, that are families that are eligible and live in affordable housing, both for home ownership and rental, to give a greater people voice to the commission. Mr. Garciano, I don't know if there's anything else that is included in.
And this is a commission we're creating that the mayor populates.
I'm sorry.
This is a commission we create that the mayor populates.
The
And why
commission.
do we do that?
No, the commission is appointed by both council and the mayor.
Currently, the commission is appointed how?
Currently, the
By the
commission is
council.
appointed 100% by council.
Okay.
This paper gives the mayor an opportunity to appoint the minority number of the commission. We still, but all of them will have to be approved by council.
I got that, but why do we give them that authority?
Why do we give him that opportunity to be able to do that? Because I think that it's important that this commission will be administered by the chief administrative officer. The trust fund would be administered by the administration, chief administrative officer, or his designee, whatever department they decide, as to how they want to go about administering that. And so I think that in the spirit of us having boards that have good representation, both from the administration as well as council, as long as council is approving the total membership to it, that is a good opportunity for us to do that. It's just a recommendation, like I said, and I think that, when we're looking at boards of this nature, where there is certainly going to be a significant amount of conversation as it relates to how we go about, implementing affordable housing policy, which is what is going to have to be developed for this trust fund and for us, the administrator of the fund. That I have found that most times when we have boards that are appointed, jointly appointed of this nature, that they seem to work better when the mayor is responsible for appointing a portion of the board, as is the council.
I asked you, and you gave me a good reason. I do wonder, however, if with 13 members on that board, and they are so differentiated to specificity, which does the mayor get to appoint, which do we get to appoint, or doesn't it matter?
Can I just break in here for 1 second to say that I appreciate all the hard work Ellen has done. This is, as Ellen said, Ellen sent this to everybody. I would ask that everybody look at it. I've been looking at it. If there's some changes you want to make to it, this has a long way to go before we're going to vote on it. But I'm glad that Ellen brought it forward. I appreciate her work on it. And if there's some things that I want to talk to her about or change, it's going to get introduced, go to committee. So we'll have lots of opportunity to get it
My last
exactly where it
question,
would be.
do we look at any areas of funding? So,
Yes, there has been some discussion as it relates to the recommendation of funding. The Section 3 funding is one source that has been considered. The question of how we could perhaps use home funds and CDBG funds, as well as general funds, whether or not there's some other opportunities for that. But a lot of those decisions also as a part of this paper is that the administration is to provide us with a working paper, some recommendations for operation and the total administration and leveraging what to come back to us. So there's a lot of work, as Kathy said, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
We're good.
But feedback is very helpful and meaningful, because as the attorneys try to draft something for us to bring to the council, we want it to be something that we all feel good about, rather than just letting it stay hung up in committee forever.
I'm gonna have it, man.
Okay, and Chris, you had something that,
Well, I had some specific stuff, but I'll hold off on that
Okay.
relative to the proposal itself. But I just want to remind everyone that when we discussed this the last time, that we were on board here for a vote on this at the first meeting in April, and I am going to hold us to that, and I'm certainly not going to be silent about it at a council meeting. So let's make sure we keep this thing running on time. I think we've, and you know, if you've got suggestions, please get them on here, because get Ms. Robertson. I just don't want this to go on any further, and if you miss these deadlines, to me, you have forfeited your opportunity to amend this ordinance. So, I mean, we really do need to get this done.
okay, then Mr. Connor?
Which brings me to the point, do we want to move forward with the appointments to this board, or do we want to hold those appointments up until this is taken care of?
We're gonna need to hold them up because the qualifications have changed on, if we go with this
Maybe, if
paper.
they do change, yeah.
It's, you know, again, and I.
Mr.
if I-
Tyler, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I will say something. I've been pretty quiet tonight. It's kind of interesting that here we are. I've gone out and solicited individuals to actually try to serve on this board, and the folks that I have gone out and solicited, quite frankly, will most likely not be able to serve on this board now. And it's very unfortunate that I've wasted their time and my time. And, you know, quite frankly, I have a lot of concern and misgivings about this whole process here of affordable housing trust fund. So I think we're going to have, Chris, Mr. Hilbert, I'm going to say right now, I will be shocked if we have this done by April 1st. I think it's an unrealistic expectation, because I think this thing's got a lot of changes that are going to need to be made from my perspective. And we're getting the budget tomorrow. We already have been informed by the mayor about this new concept that you and Ms. Graziano are serving on, dealing with the school board. We got to have our hands full for the next month. So I think we've got to be a little bit more flexible. But I understand how you feel about it, and I respect it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Now, Doug, you already spoke. Mr. Bell.
Okay, I thought you were passing me by.
No, it never passed you by.
I just wanted to be, I appreciate what's being offered here. I still think we have still far to go in terms of overall housing policy. So I don't know, Chris, about your time frame, but I would really like the opportunity for us to get our arms around housing for the city, not housing generally, and then there are categories of that. This is a little lopsided for me, and I'm not sure gets us to the overall housing policy that we're aiming for the city. But and so in terms of how's the information flow back? Is that going to you, Ellen? Is that going to a committee? Where's that?
At this point, Ellen has done this, taken initiative and done this draft. I would say if there were changes that you wanted to make to this O&R, that I would send them to Ellen. Or give Ellen a call, sit down and talk to her and say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this. And then, go forward from there.
And maybe a point of clarification, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place for Ellen, where we end up with that overall housing policy for the city that we've been
Right.
to some
No,
extent.
no,
If this is not it, then I'm.
That is not it.
Okay.
No, this, in the best assumption that I would make as relates to that this may become a
Subset
subset
of.
of it.
Okay, that's
So,
helpful.
and we may have other policies that may become subsets of the total
Okay.
policy, but
That's
no,
helpful.
this is not the policy.
Okay.
This is not a housing policy.
Okay.
All right, other comments?
Sorry, if I may.
Mr. Hilbert?
I thought, Ms. Newbill, that when I brought this up at the last meeting, I asked that we vote on the people who had made applications as of the last meeting of last month. And I was given, I thought, by consensus of members of council, maybe not everybody was on board with that, but that we would have this done by the first meeting in April, not necessarily April 1st, but the first meeting in April. So, I got outvoted 8-1, and I appreciate that. Right, that's a pretty clear mandate that we would put it off until April 1. But I didn't hear anybody at that time talk about pushing it back further than April 1st, or excuse me, the first meeting in April to actually vote on this measure.
And it may not.
And it
don't
may
think you're
not.
hearing
It's
that.
just a matter of,
Yeah.
It may not be.
Yeah,
I'm just-
come
you may have
Chris, I'm
8-1
trying to
vote
work with
again.
We're just really, I just feel like we've really, gone over and over and over this thing, and I just think it's an inertia of not
Yeah, and I
happening.
would say this, Mr. Hilbert, when we first came up with this Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it was before the recession hit. And that
Right.
recession changed everything in terms of housing. And I think that what Ms. Robertson is trying to do in this, and I think that as you look at it, you would probably try to do it, is make it fit better to the situation that we have before us today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
To Mr. Gilbert. And I'd like to say, Kathy has invested a lot of time in this affordable housing initiative, and this thing has been going on since 2006. So
Right.
yeah, it's been out there a long time. We've been to the General Assembly, got some legislation cleared up as it relates to setting up a trust, so there's been lots of initiatives that's been taken along the way. Last year, if you recall, when we adopted this budget, one of the requests, one of the text amendment to the budget was that the administration provided us with some policy guidelines for the leveraging and the implementation of the trust fund. We asked that that information be brought back to us in 3 months, and they asked that they bring it back to us by the end of the year, December. We have not received that information, so that's part of the reason why there has been this ongoing effort, and there is work that's being done by the administration as it relates to that. I think your inquiry as it relates to the urgency and let's get it done, let's just move forward, is timely and it needs to be done. But I don't want it to be perceived as if this has just been sitting out there and nothing has been worked on and so forth. We may not have all of the answers that we asked for by the end of December. And so we are 2 months behind schedule as it relates to receiving that. Just for that period of time, not to say that over the entire time hasn't been extensive. But, I think that it's important that we get the feedback from where we are right now, that we move forward, that we put it in place. My understanding is that the administration is still very supportive of this. They are working on this. There are some things that they have that we need to be able to look at, but we do need to put the board in place so that we can move forward with it. So, and I don't know that April 1st is not an attainable date. I know that the attorneys have raised some concerns as well as it relates to what is right here before us on the table. So the other comments would be very helpful that we get those, we can incorporate this in here, and we'll still move forward with that deadline in mind.
Well, Madam President, if I may just
Mr.
respond, that I do appreciate that Ms. Robertson held true to her word and said that we would have these changes, I believe, by the first meeting in March. So You're actually a week ahead of schedule, so I do want to give you that. I just really, I know people have great frustration with government because things go on for a long, long time. But I do appreciate you following up as you said that you would, and I'd like to just have us get this done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Maybe with that being said, maybe we should consider going ahead and getting the people voted on the thing, so by the time they get it done, hopefully in end of April maybe, the worst, we'll have some people doing it. That's just a suggestion. It's lingered quite a while.
And I hear you, Mr.
Throwing it out
Connor,
there.
but if we approve the changes to the membership,
Oh,
most of the people that we would appoint would be
Qualifications.
unappointed. So
okay.
if it were to
And, you know, here again, this is a draft, you got opportunities to make recommendations for changes as it relates to that. You may want to just keep the same members, but I can tell you, some of the persons that are on there that have been appointed will ask not to be appointed once they realize that they cannot participate. And we want those people in the field being able to get this job done for us.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of close this out, if that's okay, Mr. Jewell.
I just want to say, we're in high holy budget season. This has a budget impact.
It does.
We need to finish by the deadline, and if the help that's needed, we ought to get on it. It doesn't take a year. The fact is, we've been doing this, waiting on administration, dragging one, taking a step, dragging one. It doesn't take that long. And I don't know why it's taking this long, except that it has a budgetary impact. We need to have it finished by the first meeting in April, or we need to be so close that we'll all slap each other on the back and give each other credit. With all deliberate speed, we can get it done.
Thank you, Mrs. Jewell. Okay. Just remember, please read it, get back to Ms. Robertson. If there's some changes you want to make to it, or suggestions of changes. All right, Mr. Jewell, the next thing we have is review of council priorities, and from what I heard from you earlier, you don't think much of this.
I really don't.
Okay, so,
Yeah, your defensive staff, we just tried to give you
Right.
something to refer to. Councilman Jewell and I were going to get together to talk about this.
okay, so
priority.
why don't we
didn't get a
wait,
chance
why
to
don't
do
you
that.
get together with
Let's do
Lou,
it.
and then we'll come back to
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
Okay. All right, next, we're gonna go into a closed session on,
Madam President,
yes, ma'am.
Before you go in and close, I was remiss earlier. I would like to introduce Ms. Deborah Bowles. She's the new Assistant City Clerk. So, hearty welcome to her as she joins the council staff.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
You're gonna love your job. Okay, now we're gonna go into a closed session on the RRHA board vacancies. I know, now look, how many words did I spell?
7 minutes, see you soon.
None. And you?